Even with plans to exit Port Arthur, Acadian continues to have a big footprint across Southeast Texas.
The breaking news from the Golden Triangle. After 17 years in Port Arthur, Acadian Ambulance is calling it quits just a few months after agreeing to a new contract. They claim they just can't make enough money sharing ambulance service with a second company the city hired to improve response times. Very interesting timing, though. It comes just days after we busted Acadian with evidence of falsified response time records. We brought some of our findings to the Port Arthur City Council.
I just think you guys need to really take this seriously and hold people's feet to the fire.
We told you Acadian had filed a false response time that hit a massive delay for a cardiac arrest call.
If the ambulance came in here earlier, I think she would have been alive.
But 3 fire chiefs from the towns of Nederland, Port Neches, and Groves felt it necessary to reach out to assure their citizens that Acadian was safe to depend on. The chiefs say a dedicated ambulance is assigned there, response times monitored.
We feel very comfortable with the level of services that's being provided here.
But it was this comment that caught our attention.
We haven't had any companies reach out to us and apply for to work in our area.
I did meet with the fire chief of Nederland after the release of that story, and we look forward to potentially growing a relationship with them.
Andre Ruby is an official with City Ambulance. They already service half of Port Arthur and have now been asked to take over ambulance service in March.
This will be the first time in the last 17 years that Port Arthur has had a fleet of dedicated ambulances to it.
The Port Arthur police chief says they've now opened a criminal investigation after we complained.
But I absolutely, I would leave no stone unturned to make sure that we get to the bottom of it.
Tough talk from City Manager Ronald Burton. But taxpayers should be asking why he didn't act sooner after the fire chief alerted him of questionable response time records months ago.
I am the epitome of transparency. But let me tell you one more thing, though. The investigation has to be undertaken in such a way to prove whatever allegations has been done.
I get the impression there are officials here who are covering for Acadian.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
Here's a place to start, Mr. Burton. The fire department headquarters. Our first interview with Chief Benson aired January 5th. Until he got hired, it looked like no one bothered to even review Acadian's compliance with the city ordinance. Here's another view of that interview. We didn't know it at the time, but the conference room we had walked into records audio and video set up to record arson suspect interviews. There's no sign on the door telling you that, and we will forgive for a moment the fact the city illegally wiretapped my conversations with my photographer. This is what we were most interested in. 4 days after our interview with the chief aired on social media, the city got a request for a copy of the surveillance video of our interview, including the conversations off camera. You know who asked for it? The former fire chief, Larry Richard.
We are just following that procedure.
He retired 3 years ago after serving 39 years in Port Arthur. But if he's retired, why does he care?
The former fire chief filed a request to get the audio and video of our conversation.
Yes.
Do you wonder why?
I do wonder why.
None of your business? None of my business? What, are you a spy for Acadian or something?
The chief hung up on us.
It seems like there are people within this government that are protecting Acadian. You ever get that feeling?
Yes.
Absolutely not. And let me tell you, I, as city manager, if I find out that there is anybody, anyone that's covering for any ambulance authority, I will make sure I get to the bottom of it.
But Benson first reported discrepancies in Acadian response times months ago to the city manager. And while Port Arthur has failed after more than 6 weeks to let us see email communications, we now have a year of response time records. And we've uncovered so much more than just a few of Acadian's so-called clerical errors.
You must have grave concerns, though, at this point.
I really do. I do.
Ambulance response times are supposed to reflect when the Acadian ambulance arrived on the scene. But look at this. Unit 450, Unit 480. Those are not ambulances, they're supervisor cars. They may have gotten to the scene first, but that paramedic can't transport anyone. It likely means the ambulance got there later, but the records hide the true response times. Between July and December last year, supervisor units were used 107 times in those reports instead of ambulances. And look at these clerical errors. Acadian response times of 30 seconds or less. Between June and December, Acadian claimed there were 24 times they responded to a call for help in 10 seconds or less. 16 of those times were 5 seconds or less. Boy, that's a really fast ambulance. Those response times manipulated Acadian's response reports.
You think an ambulance can get to a call in 10 seconds?
I guess maybe it's on its proximity. If it's next door, let's say it's around the corner.
Really? I cry BS. How often is an ambulance like right across the street when you suffer a heart attack or call for help?
Why do these so-called clerical errors matter? Remember, Acadian is required to respond to calls for help within 8 minutes 90% of the time. If they throw in a couple of these few second gems, their numbers look a lot better.
Looking at some of the information that they've been misrepresenting for quite some time.
Taxpayers should thank Chief Benson for doing what should have been done a long time ago. But the secrecy is spreading as we dig deeper. Why are other fire departments trying so hard to keep us from looking at Acadian response times in their town? Take Jasper County ESD 1. They've hired lawyers and have gone to the Attorney General, spending taxpayer money to try and hide Acadian response time records there. Emails too. And in Pasadena, the same story. The city stonewalling our attempts to review Acadian response time record.
It's really fair to ask, if Acadian was cheating the citizens of Port Arthur, then why don't we think they're cheating in other places? And why are so many public officials fighting us and not curious about what we're finding?